In this jungle guide, I'm going to be having a look at the best challenges that you should focus on in order to become a better jungler. In a lot of my recent videos, I've been mentioning some of the ones I'm focusing on, but a lot of people are still asking what they are, why they should use them, and honestly I think there's a huge roadmap to success that you could follow or nicely put in place for you to track your progress and focus on your weak points and identify your strengths. As such, I'm going over the 9 challenges or challenge groups you should be focusing on. I will of course be explaining the how, when, where, and why and all that good stuff about each one, but don't forget Patreon has my coaching VODs and coaching signups, and of course my life companion Warwick and Volleyball guys are linked below, all the tips you need to know in the jungle and a lot more champions coming, so keep your eyes on that list. And of course please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content and want more. It lets me know what you want to see, like the start of this video. And the first category we're going with is Death Incarnate, Clean Clears, and It's My Jungle Now. Now the reason I've chosen these 3 to open with is because the rest of them are jungle champion agnostic. It means it doesn't matter what class you're necessarily going to be playing, it doesn't matter your jungling style, it doesn't matter what kind of jungler you are or want to be. All challenges will be relevant for every single kind of jungler except these 3. Obviously, if you're a ganking jungler, a hyperactive jungler who likes to be everywhere with high KP, then Death Incarnate is the one you want to strive to level up. If you happen to be a Karthus or a Shyvana, you're probably looking at Clean Clears and It's My Jungle Now. Now this doesn't necessarily mean you won't be getting your CSPM up overall, it just means in those early phases, you are not only sequencing and focusing on low KP like say that Udyr video we covered, you're definitely looking to be a bit more Ramus, a bit more Volibear, you're looking to get into lanes, get into the invades, and that's the thing. It's not just for the gankers, it's also for the invaders, people who like to remove the enemy jungler and then translate that to dives and ganks as well. Obviously, I significantly prefer Death Incarnate over the other ones, however that's because I prefer to remove the enemy jungler as well as impact lanes directly. I then use that as a counter jungling moment or as a sequencing moment, and I always get my farming numbers up to 6.5 to 7.5 ranging. Doesn't matter what champion I'm playing, they're always around that. And that's because I'm able to translate these kill leads that I get early into a lot of lane holding, lane pushing, and counter jungling later on. So if you're one of these 3 core jungling classes, you know, like an Ivan will want It's My Jungle Now for sure, but use these as a jumping off point. Which one are you focusing on more? Which one are you performing in before you even look at your challenges? If you're a ganking jungler only enthusiast and your Death Incarnate is low, well you know you really have to step up your actions. Whereas if you have a Clean Clears challenge and that's low and you're playing Karthus and Shyvana and Kayn, then you probably need to increase that as well. However, good, well-rounded junglers will typically focus a bit more on Death Incarnate anyway. Just because you don't have 70 CS before 10 doesn't mean you're not farming well enough, it just means that's not your sole focus. Now the second thing we're going to focus on here is Predator and Target Selection, the entire Predator group. Now yes, 2 of the ones we just covered are from the Predator group, but they're a little bit more unique to your playstyle. This one though is good for everybody, with the exception of the 3 buffed, which might be a Shaco thing. This group has everything you need as a jungler to focus on, and they should be around the same level, at least most of them, minus the ones I've already specifically mentioned. Target Secured and Target Selection are absolute great ones to have, then it should be leveled up to a decent degree because you're killing enemy junglers around the objective and then securing it. You're taking it while they're chunked and they have to leave the situation. This means you're prioritizing what you need to do in order to get the objective to avoid having to have an epic steal. Now, stealing 2 epic monsters in one game, that's great. You're a Chad, you're a beast, you're a monster. I love stealing shit, only in League. But typically, if you have to resort to steals all the time, then your Target Secured and Target Selection probably aren't being executed properly. You also have Buff Burglar, taking enemy buffs. You have taking dragons before 8 minutes, which you don't need to do, but it's kind of good to do for most healers, just for that mental gap, using that sort of equal and opposite gameplay. And then of course you have things like the most dangerous game, where you're killing the enemy jungler in the jungle before 10 minutes. Kindreds, Nidleys, Rengars, if you happen to be those champions, if you happen to be a strong 1v1 jungler against a worse matchup, you absolutely must punish them to get those advantages. Now you will notice from the Crab Wrangler, there is legacy challenges which are unique to this season, that's a bit easier to level up, but obviously we have Crab Wrangler here, which is you securing the first 2 scuttles. Now what this means is you have tempo advantage in the river, you took a clear that allows you to get out faster than the enemy jungler, and if you're also stacking Death Incarnate at the same time, it means you are using that to kill people on the map. You're using it to pressure the map through takedowns and then translating that into objectives. All of these challenges are connected, and if you have one that's really much higher than the other, you need to shore up that weakness and understand why it isn't exactly translating for you. That's why these challenges are great if you think deeply about them, but also focus on them within your games. Yeah, it's 80% reduced experience, but it's also a lot of gold. It's also river control, vision control, and allows you to understand why you can counter jungle things, why you can gank lanes, and why you can pressure enemy junglers away from the objectives. And it's not just the first crab, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see later in the video, it's the rest of the crabs that I have an issue with because none of you are taking it or getting it, and that's the good kind. Now let's take that target selection introduction and translate it to the rest of the objective stuff. we have Always on Time, Soul Sweep, and 2 shells are better than 1. Always on Time is very important to me as a jungler because killing epic monsters within 30 seconds of spawn shows that you prepared, backed, bought, warded, killed the enemy jungler, and then secured the thing you wanted. Now obviously with Herald spawning and Baron spawning initially, that's not always going to be the case. But for Dragons it is, for Heralds it is, and for subsequent Barons it is. And if you play a lot of jungle or only jungle and these things are like silver level, bronze level for you, then you gotta step it up because you're giving away too many objectives, you are not allowing yourself to use your tempo advantages to actually take the things that allow you to win the game. And while it's not always necessary to get both Rift Heralds, taking both shows that not only did you have control early, but it also shows that you use that control to keep control and get the second one that you can then use to open up bases. Now Soul Sweep isn't that difficult to get, it's also one of those challenges that has a regular version and a Legacy 2022 version, and as we all know, early elders can lead to demise, but if you have, good correlation between both shells, taking an early Baron, gets the word before 21 minutes, and a Soul Sweep, usually it indicates that you are maintaining control and advantage throughout the game, and you should be able to close. This is why I don't include things like taking 2 Elder Dragons, taking 3 Barons. Sure, you might have long games that are drawn out because of comp, but ideally we don't want those things necessarily. It's good to have if you win, and it's good to have if you come back, but if you're winning a game early, you don't necessarily want those things on your challenge list. Right after those 3 introductory groups, let's focus on the thing we all want to do as a jungler no matter what we're playing, dominate. The Domination group is really one I love to focus on specifically. Flame Horizoning a jungler really just feels great. And I can do it with all, and I'm sure you can do it with anything else you're playing. Obviously, the closer the competition is, the more difficult it's going to be, but it's something to strive towards if you're still having that 60, 70, 80% KP that you so desire. What does that typically mean? Well, it basically means that I'm stealing all of your jungle camps, I'm holding every wave that needs to be held, I'm pushing waves that need to be pushed, I'm splitting and controlling vision lines before objectives because no one else is going to do it. I am a vacuum for resources that are being neglected. You're not hijacking from your team necessarily. Obviously, sometimes you have to. I mean, they deserve it if they suck or if they just leave side waves to drool. Well, we might as well and go mop up those waves for ourselves. Now, the brush has eyes. Finish a game up 20% vision score. Great for supports, even better for junglers. And you'll see what I talk about when I mention the vision section. On another level, be 3 levels up, and that's really easy to do when you don't focus on it. If you do these other things that we're talking about in this video, these other challenges, you focus on being a well-rounded, aggressive jungler, the 3-level leads kind of just happen. And it definitely happens if you watch my videos because it's one of my favorite things to do, but I don't do it with the goal of doing it. It happens very frequently because I love denial, because a denial for them is a gain for me, which is a gain for my team. And likewise, lane command and lane domination, replace the lane with jungle if you want, are great metrics to decide and show at one point in the game you're actually popping off. If you are not up 20% golden experience at 7 minutes and that challenge is kind of low, but your lane domination at 40 minutes is significantly higher, it means while you're a little bit behind early, you're still catching up and then taking over at the end of the early game. Likewise, if you're a strong early game jungler and you are up heavily at 7 minutes, but your 14-minute challenge is kind of diminished, it means you are not converting that 7-minute lead to that 40-minute lead. So it's a great way to track your progress throughout the 2 phases of the early game, something we talk about quite a lot on this channel. And it's an interesting metric to see which part of the domination group you kind of thrive at or struggle at. Ideally though, if you are good at it, you're kind of taking over all categories. But what exactly does that mean? And for that, we need to talk about the Commando group. This isn't necessarily a challenge, but it does track how much of something you do. Really, it is a veterancy collection. It is simply you doing a lot of stuff over time. It's not going to be difficult to do, but look at the difference between you taking the first 2 scuttles and then taking scuttle along, which is killing scuttle grabs in total. Now, I play a lot of support. As a jungler and as a support, I get a hell of a lot of scuttle crabs. Why am I taking mid and late game scuttle crabs, which are worth as much as a Krug camp, while someone wasted time on Krugs? Smite it, snack it, take it, move on to the next phase by getting into their jungle. Keep up the river control with the RNG scuttles. At level 9 with Krugs, they are worth basically half an experience point more and only 5 gold less, 131 to 126. Please keep control of that and keep track of that. Now the rest of it here, taking Barons, destroying turrets with Herald and Plates, taking down dragons, stealing epic monsters, that's always a fun one. Taking Rift Heralds, those are great, but you also have Dine In and Dine Out. Kill jungle monsters in your jungle and kill jungle monsters in the enemy jungle. Now the first challenge group we talked about, counter jungling early. Now you don't necessarily need to do that all the time early if your champion class doesn't allow it, if your matchups are a bit more negative, but overall dining out is something you want to maintain because when you have leads in the early to mid game, you need to start pushing the map and taking their camps. Denying their experience, plus 8 for you, is also minus 8 for them. It's a 16-point swing in terms of CS tracking. So if you have Dine In at say gold and Dine Out at like silver or even bronze, it means you are having a great way of getting the game going and you're controlling your own house very well, but you're not pushing leads. You're not punishing enemy jungler mistakes, and you're not counter jungling at all. so get on it. And obviously, it's a good way to track any weak points. If you have a specific one that's maybe super diamond, super platinum, and you have one that's super silver, super bronze, understand that that's something that's lacking from a well-rounded jungle game, and you just want to raise it up a little bit, make a note of it in the subsequent games you play. Now we need to talk about shoddy construction and no quarter. So far, yeah, we've kind of covered every aspect of jungling, or so you think, but getting a takedown for the first turret of the game, or killing enemy champions while they're near their own turret, means that not only are you sequencing, controlling, ganking, and doing all the things junglers are meant to do, but you're also using that to dive and use that to elevate the game state, where you take that first turret, you start to move your chess pieces around, you transition into the mid game when the enemy isn't ready, you use that to go and dine out and take their camps, you use that to control and take objectives within 30 seconds of their spawns. It's a very interesting challenge for me to look at when assessing people's challenge points and where they have it leveled up. If you're not necessarily doing that enough, you're going to notice that you're probably struggling to translate leads into the rest of the categories that we're talking about. Likewise, following shoddy construction and no quarter, we have the Baron power play and the Herald usage. I will not lie to you, Baron power play with 2,500 gold, this is definitely a team focused thing, but it's also about your decision making in terms of splitting for turret pressure, taking inhibs, knowing when to return, counter jungle, take dragons, and also pick the right fights because you obviously have the lead at this point to actually close games out. I do understand it's not up to you, but if you have, from the Commando group a huge amount of Barons taken, or perhaps you're getting a lot of early 21-minute Barons, but your Baron power play is like bronze or something like this, and it means you're picking the oranges, you're just not squeezing it for juice, you're just throwing it away for some particular reason, and orange juice is goated, let it be known. However, Go Shelly Go, that's such a dumbass name for the Herald, honestly I really hate the fact that they called it Shelly. I mean, we couldn't have come up with something more interesting and unique. Anyway, taking two turrets with the same Rift Herald, that is not always easy, but it does show your ability to get a prime usage and push. The thing is though, because we focus on the first Herald and taking those final 2-3 plates, you are not always going to have enough steam left in terms of HP, minion wave pressure, and obviously the enemy team rotating while yours doesn't, to always take 2 turrets, unless of course you are Belveth. However, it is one I want you to focus on if you are a frequent user of the second Herald, and even just the first Herald if you don't necessarily need to use it for many plates. But if you can see it's bronze or something like that, okay, well then maybe instead of using it just for some gold infusion, I can use it to really push the state of the map, and perhaps be a little bit more patient with where I put it, but obviously the whole goal is to elevate by taking at least one, and the second one can be kind of a bonus. Hey, you knew in this video there was going to be a vision category. It's me, I love vision, I'm vision obsessed. I unfortunately buy too many control wards, but I use that for early invades, for vision control and visual confirm for my teammates, not just for me, but for everyone on the map, but also just to provide that security, knowing that if they make the wrong play, and they're contesting a dragon they shouldn't, I can do that, I can pull the trigger, I can destroy them, secure the dragon, and then move that vision around based upon where we're going to be on the map next. But because we're junglers, we're not always going to be placing vision wards a lot, we are definitely though going to be having darknesses everywhere as well. Takedown wards and control wards, while you don't need to go over the top with them in terms of buying them, you definitely should be scanning and destroying wards as much as possible. I take both these metrics very seriously in terms of vision denial and visual confirm, and I think if you utilize and focus on these appropriately, then you're going to have a lot better time tracking, and of course counter ganking and making equal and opposite plays. However, if your vision is particularly low, like a bronze level or something like that, then you are most likely being seen when you don't want to be seen, you're not seeing what you should be seeing, and tracking randomness when they don't do things they should is going to be a lot more difficult. And finally, for the 9th thing, yes, jungle diff. Win games as a jungler. Now, you might think on the face of it, well, that's just straightforward, I just have to keep playing and keep winning and eventually this will level up. But I want you to think about this like you think about counter jungling. Every time you win a game as a jungler for this challenge, it means the enemy jungler isn't getting it. And that is so satisfying, and that's the video, and I hope you enjoy these challenges, and I hope you focus on the ones you need to become a better jungler. If you want to understand how to execute these principles and using underused tips, click the video in the box on the top right. If you want to understand more about dynamic pathing and adapting your game state to the randomness of junglers in your elo, click the video in the box in the bottom left.